Jesus did not come shouting from the sky or demanding attention through fear. He arrived quietly, wrapped in flesh, carrying the full weight of God's heart into a fragile human world. And from the moment he breathed his first breath, heaven touched earth in a way it never had before, because God chose closeness over distance and love over authority. The world he entered was broken by pride, wounded by injustice, and exhausted by empty religion. Yet Jesus did not come to shame the world for its darkness. He came to become light within it. Everywhere he walked, he revealed that God was not searching for perfect people, but willing hearts, not religious performance, but honest surrender, not outward purity, but inward transformation. Jesus spoke to fishermen and kings with the same truth, because heaven does not value status the way earth does. And he showed again and again that God's kingdom begins where humility lives. When Jesus spoke, his words did not merely inform the mind, they exposed the heart, because truth has a way of finding us even when we try to hide. He told stories not to confuse people, but to awaken them, to remind them that God's voice is often heard best when pride is silent. He spoke of seeds and soil, storms and bread, light and darkness, because eternal truths often wear ordinary clothing, and he wanted people to understand that God is present in everyday life, not locked inside temples or rituals. Jesus looked at people the world had discarded and spoke dignity into their existence, reminding them that their past did not disqualify them from God's future. He showed that repentance was not about shame, but about returning home, not about punishment, but about healing. When he forgave sins, he was not ignoring justice. He was fulfilling it through mercy, revealing that grace is not God lowering his standards, but God paying the price himself. Jesus taught that following him would cost everything, yet he also promised that nothing surrendered to God is ever truly lost. He warned that comfort can become a prison, and success can become a distraction if they replace God as the source of life. He called people to take up their cross, not because suffering is holy, but because love requires sacrifice. And true life is found only when self is no longer the center. Jesus never separated faith from action. To believe in him meant to become like him, to love the unlovable, forgive the unforgivable, and serve without applause. His life was a living sermon that showed power does not need to dominate, truth does not need to shout, and holiness does not need to isolate itself from pain. As opposition grew, Jesus did not retreat. He leaned deeper into obedience, knowing that the cross was not a mistake, but a mission. In his final hours, he carried the full weight of human sin, fear, and rebellion, yet responded not with anger, but with forgiveness, proving that God's love is stronger than humanity's worst failures. The cross revealed the cost of grace and the seriousness of sin at the same time, showing that love does not ignore evil, but overcomes it. When Jesus cried out and breathed his last, it was not the end of hope, but the completion of redemption, because what looked like defeat was actually victory unfolding in silence. The resurrection was God's declaration that death is not final, despair is not permanent, and obedience is never wasted. Jesus rose not as a ghost of the past, but as the foundation of a new future, inviting humanity into restored relationship with God. After rising, he did not demand recognition, he offered peace. He did not condemn doubt, he met it with patience. He entrusted his message to ordinary people to show that God's power is revealed best through surrendered lives. Today, Jesus still speaks, not always through noise, but through conscience, truth, love, and conviction.
his message remains unchanged in a changing world, that God is near, forgiveness is available, transformation is possible, and
Jesus stepped into human history not to decorate it with religious language, but to rescue it with divine truth. And from the moment he walked among people, he revealed that God was not distant, silent, or uninterested, but deeply involved in the human story. He did not come to build an empire of power. He came to rebuild broken hearts that had forgotten what it meant to be truly alive. In a world chasing approval, Jesus spoke of identity rooted in God, reminding people that their value was not decided by wealth, success, or public opinion, but by the simple fact that they were loved by the Creator. Wherever Jesus went, he disturbed comfort and healed wounds at the same time, because real love does both. He challenged pride while lifting the humble, confronted lies while speaking hope, and exposed empty religion while offering living faith. His presence alone caused people to examine themselves, not because he condemned them, but because truth naturally reveals what is hidden. Jesus taught that God's kingdom does not arrive through force or politics, but through changed hearts. And he made it clear that transformation begins within before it can ever affect the world outside. He showed that faith is not proven by words spoken in public, but by obedience lived out in private, when no one is watching and no applause is given. Jesus warned that a divided heart cannot carry divine purpose, because serving God requires surrender, not compromise. Yet even as he demanded everything, he gave even more, offering peace that circumstances cannot steal, joy that suffering cannot destroy, and hope that death itself cannot silence. When people were hungry, he fed them, not only to fill their stomachs, but to show that God cares about every part of human life, both spiritual and physical. When storms rose, he calmed them, not just to display authority, but to teach trust, reminding his followers that fear grows loud when faith grows weak. When he healed the sick, he was not only restoring bodies, but restoring dignity, declaring that suffering does not define a person's worth. Jesus made it clear that God's love is not earned by effort, but received through humility, and that repentance is not about self-hatred, but about turning back toward truth. As resistance increased, Jesus remained steady, never driven by public opinion or personal comfort, because he lived with eternity in view. He understood that the cross was not a punishment forced upon him, but a path willingly chosen, where love would confront sin and grace would absorb judgment. On the cross, Jesus carried humanity's failures without becoming bitter, humanity's violence without responding in anger, and humanity's sin without abandoning love. His silence before accusation spoke louder than any defense, revealing that obedience to God is more powerful than the need to be understood by people. When he breathed his last, it seemed like hope had died, but heaven was only beginning its final declaration. The resurrection was not just a miracle. It was a message that God keeps his promises, even when everything appears lost. Jesus rose to show that life surrendered to God is never wasted, that darkness never wins, and that love remains stronger than death. After rising, he did not seek recognition or revenge. He sought restoration, meeting fearful hearts with peace and uncertain minds with purpose. He reminded his followers that faith was not meant to be hidden or protected, but lived boldly, even when it costs comfort or safety. Today, the message of Jesus still confronts the modern world, calling people away from shallow success and empty noise into a life of meaning, truth, and surrender. He invites hearts weighed down by guilt to receive forgiveness, minds trapped in anxiety to find rest, and lives chasing direction to discover purpose. Jesus does not promise a life free of struggle, but he promises a life anchored in truth, guided by love, and strengthened by God's presence. To follow